Remember the olden days when life was simple. Someone would wear a cross and they'd get in trouble for it. People would say, you can't wear that here, that's not right, wearing a cross. And Christians would say, oh, how ridiculous. It's just a Christian symbol. Of course someone should be able to wear a cross. That was in the olden days. But we've now got a case where Christians are objecting to people holding crosses. Now, what I'm going to say in this video is from a more sort of personal Christian perspective, but let's have a look at this. So this is a letter that was written by a whole load of co-signatories, various prominent Christians from different denominations and organisations, following the Tommy Robinson rally in London, at which quite a few people were holding that big wooden crosses. So what do these Christian leaders have to say about these people holding crosses? We are deeply concerned about the co-opting of Christian symbols, particularly the cross, during Saturday's Unite the Kingdom rally. There were undoubtedly diverse motivations for those engaged in the event. We respect the right to free speech and the right to hold different views on issues such as immigration. Right, I'm glad to hear that, because sometimes from some Christian organisations, from some churches, it sounds like they don't acknowledge that there's a range of valid views on immigration, but they respect the right for people to hold different views on issues such as immigration. Well, let's hope that that's true. Well, let's see. We also understand that for many of those involved in the rally, there's a deep sense of frustration at feeling unheard and forgotten in the democratic process. Yes, I think that's fair enough. I think a lot of people at the rally, in particular, their issue will be immigration. They feel for decades, governments, political parties have promised to reduce immigration, but then they haven't done it. So yes, there's a lot of frustration there, and having felt the democratic process hasn't worked as it ought to have done. Okay, fair enough. So the letter goes on. We know that we cannot heal this wound unless the church and society as a whole rises to do more to address the issues of poverty, inequality, and exclusion. Now, talking about healing this wound, that suggests that the people who are frustrated about overly high levels of immigration, illegal immigration, it's like that they're wounded. There's something that needs healing about them. I mean, can it not just be a straightforward political frustration that they want the government to do what they think needs doing? It's not a wound that needs healing particularly. I think that's maybe a bit patronising. But then what's their prescription for this wound? We need to address issues of poverty, inequality, and exclusion. So basically, you've got a group of people saying, we're concerned about issues related to immigration. And this group of Christians is saying, we know the answer to this. The answer is, we've got to address issues of poverty, inequality, and exclusion. In other words, we're not going to listen to what you're saying. We actually know what you want, and it's actually nothing remotely related to what you're saying you want. Actually, I think it's pretty patronising. Address issues of poverty, inequality, and exclusion. That sounds like cut and paste from the Labour Party manifesto, like assuming a left-wing perspective on things. Anyway, let us continue with this letter. However, this rally included racist, anti-Muslim and far-right elements. Right, I'm not absolutely certain about racist, but I would agree that the speakers at Tommy Robinson's event, a substantial number of the speakers, were very extreme. And some of the things they were saying, I would say, were very objectionable. So I agree. I think the speakers were far more extreme than the relatively mainstream attendees at the rally. That would be my take on it. So I basically agree with you. A lot of the speakers were out of order in what they were saying. Okay. As Christians from different theological and political backgrounds, we stand together against the misuse of Christianity. Right, okay. So how is Christianity being misused here? So you've got people in the crowd there holding a cross, and they're probably holding it as a symbol of national identity and culture. Maybe to contrast themselves with Muslims as well. But it's a cultural, political, national identity type thing. Okay, is that a misuse of Christian symbols? Well, that's maybe pushing it too far. Is it doing any harm if that's the way people feel as part of their identity and culture? Is that misusing them? Not really sure about that. Now, another issue is the association, like when the Ku Klux Klan walk around with crosses, then obviously we'd say that's just wrong. We just don't want that. It's associating with something that is just plain wrong and evil. We definitely don't want that. But is that the case with these people at the Tommy Robinson rally, that this letter is basically condemning. It's wagging the finger at them and saying, you're wrong. We don't want to be associated with you. We don't want you holding the cross and thinking you're anything to do with Christianity. Well, I think that's a very different matter. Anyway, so the signatories of the letter are saying we stand together against the misuse of Christianity. But I would challenge them and say, well, actually you don't. Actually, not in a consistent manner. Look at Pride events around the UK. There have been multiple events, Pride events, where people have taken along explicitly Christian paraphernalia, messages, placards, etc. So taking Christian identity, Christian symbols into Pride events. Okay. Now, Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom rally, free speech, immigration. Now, are they black and white issues? I mean, the themes, just looking at the themes, does that show immediately that rally is contrary to Christian principles? Well, I would say no, it doesn't. What might be said within it by some speakers might be, but the actual theme of the event isn't like black and white wrong. It's not the antithesis of any Christian teaching. Now, when you look at a Pride event, though, it is. I mean, the whole assumption, the whole purpose of a Pride event is to promote a point of view that is antithetical to traditional biblical Christian teaching. So when the signatories to this letter say they stand together against the misuse of Christianity, my challenge would be that maybe they stand together against what might be the misuse of Christianity in sort of right-wing type causes, but when it's in with causes that are more associated with the left wing, well, they don't actually get together to write a letter about that. Let's continue with the letter. Jesus calls us to love both our neighbours and our enemies and to welcome the stranger. Okay, fine, absolutely true. So welcoming the stranger, but what does that mean with regard to immigration? Does it mean that a nation should welcome illegal immigrants? I mean, what does that even mean? Does it mean that a nation should have open borders like no nation in the world has? So I'm not quite sure what's felt there. I mean, I worry that for a substantial number of Christians, churches, the immigration has become almost an idol. It's like open borders is the Christian view, and it's the overriding moral issue of our time. And so other moral issues are just seen as footnotes, but you've got to be pro-open borders to really be a Christian. I think that really comes across not infrequently in the Christian circles that I am aware of. Right, carrying on with the letter. Any co-opting or corrupting of the Christian faith to exclude others is unacceptable. Not quite sure what this means, to exclude others. So, for example, illegal immigrants, they can't be excluded. Again, it's not quite clear what this means. You could imagine it being taken to mean that just everyone must be welcome to the nation, legal, illegal, whatever, open borders. But Christian faith itself offers a welcome to everyone. Everyone repents and is willing to embark on the life of discipleship, if you like. People who are not willing to do that or don't want to do that sort of exclude themselves from it. But so what we've got here, the Tommy Robinson rally, if you see these pictures of people holding wooden crosses, they're what I would call political Christians. In many cases, they won't actually have what I would regard as a genuine Christian faith, but they want to associate themselves with Christian identity, Christian culture. And the analogy I use for that is like someone who said that they are an undying fan of, say, Falkirk Football Club. They're absolutely devoted to the club. They wear the strip, they argue with the opposing fans, but they never watch a game. They don't know the rules. They don't know who's on the team. Now, how are we going to respond to someone like that? And the ideal response to a person like that is, hey, come to a game. Come and watch a game. And surely they'd think, well, I probably should do, shouldn't I? If I'm talking all this talk about Falkirk Football Club and I'm wearing the gear, I mean, I probably ought to go along, hadn't I? And actually watch a game. So when someone's holding a cross who maybe isn't a Christian, what should the response be to them? Should it be, stop holding that cross, you're not a Christian? Or should it be, you're holding a cross, Christian, you're interested in Christianity, are you? Well, how about coming to church? Come and meet God. So if someone's talking about Christian values, tradition, heritage, culture, my attitude is great. I mean, what a great start. We could say to them, come to church, or let's talk and find out what that's all about. It's almost as if these people are wanting to be Christian. And surely the response to people who are wanting to be Christian shouldn't be, stop lifting that cross up. Now, I wrote an article a while ago. You can find it on our social media. I encourage you to read it. And the title was, "The Political Right is Trying to Hijack the Church, but the Church has already been hijacked by the political left." And I think that does sum up the situation in many ways. I think a lot of churches and Christian organisations operate on sort of cosy, respectable left-wing assumptions. It's left-wing syncretism, really. Left-wing political viewpoint has become enmeshed in the church and in many Christian organisations. And I think now that Christianity has been more explicitly associated with some right-wing causes, then people who've engaged in this sort of left-wing syncretism are up in arms about it. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the signatories to this letter. These people who stand against the misuse of Christianity. So we have signatories from the Evangelical Alliance, from CARE, the Church of Scotland, many bishops. We also had a signature from St James's Church, Piccadilly. So they're objecting against the misuse of Christianity. This is what goes on in their church. Okay, they misuse Christian symbols and Christian faith in order to promote a cause that is just contrary to Christian teaching. Well, I've got Steve Chalke as a signatory. He is someone who's misused his position as a Christian. He claims to run a Christian organisation, Reverend Steve Chalke, and he uses that position to promote views that are contrary to biblical, traditional, historical Christian teaching.
Hi, I'm Steve Chalke, and as you know, there's a huge debate going on in our society around the possibility of gay marriage. Should marriage be extended to same-sex couples? It's a heated debate, lots has been said, and lots of it is negative from the church. Oasis has a slightly different take on all of these things. Indeed, we believe that gay marriage isn't the issue at all. We believe there's another far more important issue that, because we've failed to look at, has now been swept up in a different debate. It's the issue of inclusion.
We've got Reverend Dr. Sam Wells from St Martin's in the Fields Church, and he said, "Same-sex marriage neither adds nor takes away from marriage. It's simply an equivalent, with largely identical pressures and joys." So he is someone using his platform in a church, is misusing Christianity to promote a different cause. And yet, the other signatories, Evangelical Alliance, CARE, etc., they're willing to align themselves with these people who misuse Christianity to endorse basically sexual immorality. They're willing to be co-signatories of this letter. So this is not really adding up, is it? A bit of an inconsistency. So when it comes to the Tommy Robinson rally, the signatories here are saying you shouldn't associate with this because there are some elements within it that are at odds with Christianity. But then these people do exactly that in this letter. They're associating themselves with people who use Christian identity and symbols to attack Christian truth. Now, this is just one little incident in what's pretty complex terrain at the moment. We're entering uncharted territory in the United Kingdom in that Christianity is becoming much more prominent in politics. As I say, I would encourage you to read my article. I'll maybe even try and put it in the description below. But just to summarise, I think when it comes to politics, the church should be an export business. They should be taking Christian principles and communicating them, injecting them into as many contexts as possible, including the political arena. So the church takes Christian teaching and speaks it into politics. But what it shouldn't do is be an import business. It shouldn't import political ideas and then make them part of the church or part of Christian teaching. But I think for decades that's tended to be what's been happening, particularly with left-wing ideas, that the church has imported them, and then when the church is asked to speak on an issue, they're just exporting left-wing progressive thinking with Christian packaging. But that is not the way it ought to be. And I think where people are wanting to be Christian, whatever they mean by that, even if they don't know what they mean by that, the church should be right there, offering them a warm welcome and eternal truth. Right, I hope that was interesting. if you'd like to talk about what I've said in this video, we could do that. I love to discuss with people. So do get in touch and we can maybe have a conversation about it, maybe on the live stream. That would surely be very interesting. So thanks for watching and see you next time.